What's up, my comic comrades? The Star Wars galaxy is among our favorite things in all of geekdom, and one of the best aspects of Star Wars are the amazing starships and fighters that have been created for that world. In fact, Star Wars easily has some of the most iconic spaceships or crafts in all of fiction, and today we're going to give you our list of the 10 coolest starships from a galaxy far, far away. Narrowing down the list to 10 was no easy task, but we did it, so let's see where the Force guided us. Kicking off the list is the Bad Batch's Marauder, which is a modified Omicron-class attack shuttle. The ship is also known as the Havoc Marauder. It's the personal ship of the Bad Batch, aka Clone Force 99. They used it during the Clone Wars and after the execution of Order 66, which caused most of the clones to turn on the Jedi. Plain and simple, this starship is just awesome looking. It's one of the coolest looking starships that Star Wars has to offer. So it makes sense that Clone Force 99 are the ones to fly it, as they're essentially the baddest clone troopers in all the galaxy. What I'm saying is, even though this ship is relatively new to the Star Wars universe, it has already become an iconic one, and I just hope they do not blow it up in season 2 of Bad Batch, like they did to the Mandalorian's Razor Crest, because that might bring a tear to my eye. Next up, we have the Bwing. This ship has a special place in my heart because it's part of the original trilogy, first appearing in Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. It's been seen countless times after that in the Star Wars universe and is as much a mainstay as the X-Wing, Ywing, or TIE Fighter. The thing that makes the Bwing incredibly badass is that the Rebel engineers designed it for a singular purpose, to destroy Imperial capital ships. To be able to do that, they're freaking equipped and packed with all the weaponry and flight controls normally used for way bigger ships into the body of a starfighter. Because of this, Bwings aren't really good in dogfights or as maneuverable as an X-Wing or Y-Wing. Rebel pilots would even say they moved and maneuvered like freighters. So they weren't the easiest thing to fly, but the starships proved themselves as a valuable asset during the Battle of Endor, as the pilots of the Blade Squadron used them to target and take down Imperial Star Destroyers. Needless to say, it earns its spot on this list. Next up, we have a ship that strikes fear into the rebellion, and that is an Imperial-class Star Destroyer. This massive arrowhead-shaped capital ship was used by several organizations such as the Galactic Empire, the First Order, and the Sith Eternal. There's also different variations of the ship, such as the Star Dreadnoughts, also known as Superclass Star Destroyers, which was the biggest model of the Star Destroyer ever built by the Galactic Empire. And it's pretty dang intimidating. You also have the Mega-class Star Dreadnought, also called the Mega-class Star Destroyer, which was used by the First Order and its Supreme Leader. And while all variations are cool for us, it's all about the original Imperial I-class Star Destroyer that was used for episodes 4 through 6, aka the original trilogy. I remember being a kid seeing that ship pass over the screen and just being in awe of how epic it looked. Coming in at number 7 is the Naboo N1 Starfighter. I remember seeing this ship for the first time in the trailers for Star Wars The Phantom Menace as a youngling, and my mind being blown. I thought it was the coolest, most sleek-looking Star Wars ship to date. As the official breakdown for the ship states, its sleek design exemplifies the philosophy of art and function witnessed throughout Naboo technology. But not only is it easy on the eyes, it's a beast of a ship as well, having twin radial J-type engines that are capped in awesome-looking chrome. It's a single-pilot ship that allows a droid to plug in right behind the pilot, much like an X-Wing. All the parts of the N1 Starfighter are handmade, no droid assembly line. It's also capable of jumping to hyperspace without a docking ring. And what's also dope about the starship is that it's been brought back into the spotlight as a modified N1 Starfighter, becoming the Mandalorian's new ship as seen in the Book of Boba Fett. Meaning we're gonna see a lot more of the ship in the future, and I can't wait. Coming in at number 6 is easily one of the most iconic Rebel fighters, and that, of course, is the Ywing. This starfighter is known as a workhorse of the Rebellion and has been used since the Clone Wars. This fighter is used for bombing runs against capital ships, dogfights, and ground targets. Though this starfighter has been around longer than the X-Wing, it's often overlooked by newer Rebellion starfighters such as the A-Wing and X-Wing. But no matter how you slice it, you cannot diminish the Y-Wing's historical importance to the Rebellion. But the Y-Wing doesn't just have functional importance to the Star Wars universe, it has real-world importance to Star Wars, as it's one of the first starfighters we ever saw, first appearing in Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. It was actually used in the entirety of the original trilogy, as well as Star Wars Rebels, Star Wars The Clone Wars, countless comics, games, and more. Putting it simply, the Y-Wing is one of the most iconic ships in Star Wars. Full stop. Now, if you're into Star Wars as much as we are, you're gonna love today's sponsor, Bricker Builds. If that name sounds familiar, it might be because we've brought you several of their amazing creations in the past, and we're big fans of their work. What they're able to do with Lego bricks is freaking amazing. I mean, just check out Master Luke's saber from Episode 6. It's built with nearly nearly 700 Lego bricks. They're sturdy and wieldable, though if they clash with one of their other sabers, like this dope Mandalorian life-size black saber, you might shed a few bricks. Bricker Builds is actually not affiliated with the Lego group at all, nor any of its license holders like Marvel or DC. They're an independent group of insanely talented fan designers and artists who have teamed up to inspire your next life-size brick build creation. Which is why Bricker Build's tagline is, engage your imagination, brick by brick. And we think they do just that. As collectors, they are incredible additions to our collection, and they're crazy fun to assemble with their intuitive instruction manuals. You can purchase these at brickerbuilds.com, and if you use code VARIANT, you'll get 10% off your entire order. And while you're on their site, you have to check out their newest models too, like their life-size Mando helmet and dinosaur eggs. Once again, don't forget to click the Bricker Builds link in the description and use our code to get 10% off. Making its way to the top 5 is an extremely new ship to the Star Wars franchise, and that is the Mandalorian's Razor Crest. For me, it's already become one of the most iconic, as it's the ship of yet another fan-favorite Star Wars character, the Mandalorian. That's right, this ship is used by Mando himself to fly him and Grogu around. I love it so much I have a little model of it on my desk. The Razor Crest was formerly a military craft used to patrol local territories in the time before the Empire. So the ship is actually pretty old and often referred to as junk by several characters within the Mandalorian series, but it's dope nonetheless. I mean, the Millennium Falcon, anyone? That is a very old ship, and it is literally called the fastest hunk of junk in the galaxy, but we all love it. Now, the thing that's unfortunate about the ship is in Season 2, it was blown up by the Empire, so the ship no longer exists, and Mando was given a modified Naboo N1 Starfighter in the Book of Boba Fett, as I mentioned earlier. But either way, the Razor Crest will always be remembered, and us fans will always love it. Sitting pretty at number 4 is yet another one of the most iconic ships in all of the Star Wars franchise, and that is the TIE Fighter. Just the sound of a TIE Fighter alone makes them one of the most iconic things within the franchise. You all know what I'm talking about. As soon as I said that, you all heard that screeching sound they make as they come soaring into action, which is one of the many reasons it had to be so high on our list. It just screams Star Wars. Literally. When you see a TIE Fighter, you know the Empire is coming for you, as they were carried aboard Star Destroyers and battle stations. They are essentially the equivalent to an X-Wing or Y-Wing for the Empire. TIE Fighters can maneuver extremely well and are used for dogfights. Much like Y-Wings, they were first introduced to us in the first Star Wars film, A New Hope, and then seen throughout the entirety of the original trilogy, as well as Rogue One, Rebels, and countless comics and games. I know for pretty much all Star Wars fans, when you think Imperial fleet or the Empire, you think two things: the Death Star and the TIE Fighters. Darth Vader himself even flew a distinctive experimental TIE Fighter called the TIE Fighter Advance, using it to chase down Luke in A New Hope. So if the most famous Sith Lord and character in all of Star Wars uses it, you know the TIE Fighter is a badass ship. Making its way into the top 3 is the Slave One. You knew it was going to be here, and you knew it was going to have a high spot because, I mean, it's the Slave One. What Star Wars fan doesn't love this ship? Answer: not many. This is the iconic ship of Boba Fett, which originally belonged to his father Jango Fett. Like seemingly all of the favorite ships in Star Wars, the Slave One is aged but very effective and cool. The ship reminds me of a slugger snail in a lot of ways due to its distinctive design. It's able to fly upright or in a laying down position, if you will. The Slave One is also loaded with tons of hidden defensive and offensive weaponry and equipment. It has a reputation of striking fear into anyone who sees it, as both Jango and Boba Fett have used it successfully to capture their bounties. It debuted in arguably the best Star Wars film of all time, The Empire Strikes Back. It has also appeared in the Attack of the Clones, The Clone Wars, The Mandalorian, and The Book of Boba Fett. In summary, it's a great ship that belongs to one of the greatest Star Wars characters. And just missing the top spot is hands down one of my personal favorite Star Wars fighters, and that of course is the X-Wing. The X-Wing Starfighter is by far the most versatile Rebel Alliance starfighter that balances firepower and speed. It is also the most known and iconic Rebel Alliance starfighter. The thing is armed with 4 laser cannons and 2 proton torpedo launchers, effectively being able to take on anything the Empire can throw at it. It is incredibly nimble and probably the best fighter the Rebellion has for dogfights against the Empire. And besides all that awesome stuff, the main reason this starfighter is so iconic is because it's the starfighter Luke used to destroy the Death Star. And it's still his starfighter of choice, so seeing Luke use it again in The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett just brought tears to my eyes and all those childhood feels back. Quite literally, the X-Wing is Star Wars as much as a lightsaber is. Again, it's the ship Luke uses and flies around with R2-D2, another symbol and face of Star Wars. This ship could easily have been number 1, but was only beaten by one other ship, so let's see what it is. Rounding out our list and coming in at number 1 is, of course, the Millennium Falcon. The Millennium Falcon is definitively the most iconic ship in all of Star Wars and will always be so. It originally belonged to Lando Calrissian, but was later won by the one and only Han Solo. At which point, him and his loyal friend Chewbacca would zip around the galaxy in it. But soon, Han and Chewie would befriend Luke, Leia, R2, and C-3PO, and all of them would fly around in the Falcon together while they tried to take down the Empire. The Falcon essentially didn't just become the ship, but the mobile home of sorts for the majority of the most important characters in Star Wars. The ship is an extensively modified Corellian light freighter. It's also a legend in the smuggler circles, as it's something that's highly coveted by many because it's known for being the fastest hunk of junk in the galaxy. And I think that's part of the charm, because the Falcon is just that, a hunk of junk that Han and Chewie are always having to fix and work on, but at the same time, it always gets them out of any crappy situation they're in. It always pulls through in the end, is what I'm saying. Put it this way, the Millennium Falcon is so iconic, an original production model of it was on display at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum. You heard me correctly, the Millennium Falcon, a fictional spacecraft, was on display at the Smithsonian. If that doesn't scream iconic, I don't know what does. But there you have it, my comic comrades, our list of the 10 most iconic ships, starfighters, and spacecrafts from a galaxy far, far away. Clearly, these lists are highly subjective, so let us know what your list would be down in the comments. First up for the week of the 27th, we have Batman Beyond the White Knight issue 7. After a freak accident, Derek Powers has been transformed into the supervillain Blight. With his metahuman abilities, he's more powerful than ever, and it's only a matter of time before Gotham becomes his forever. Now we have King Spawn 18. Disruptor takes a walk through the fiery pits of hell in search of the perfect gift. Meanwhile, Spawn and King Slayer join forces to stop a monster. Here we have DC vs. Vampires issue 12. The cataclysmic final issue of the best-selling series will end with a bang and a whimper. Will Lord of the Vampires Nightwing win, or will heroes come out on top? Next, we have the Amazing Spider-Man 16. After the battle with Venom last issue, it's time for the main event. That's right, it's Peter Parker versus Ben Reilly. And finally, we have Action Comics 1050. After battles with Mongol and Pariah's Dark Army, Kal-El is back on Earth and here to stay. What will the future look like for Superman? And that's gonna bring today's episode to a close, but if you enjoyed this one, be sure to check out this episode right here. And if you like all of our content, like, subscribe, and comment, it helps us out. But other than that, I'll see you next time when I talk about all things comics.